So what I'd like to talk about today is consciousness and a little bit about OBEs. Since I've written books about OBEs, and everybody knows I have, but what's the core element of OBEs? What makes it important to us? And that is, it's the exploration of consciousness. It's always about consciousness. And what's wild is that we use that word so much, don't we? Everybody talks about consciousness and awareness and perception, but yet we truly don't really know what consciousness, what is it? What truly is consciousness? How does it function? What's the big questions? Like, where do we come from and where are we going? It's all about the exploration of consciousness, because this is the only thing we're going to take with us. So it's the main thing that we have to develop throughout our lives. To look at it from a whole different perspective, many people don't really think of it this way, but right now, everyone sitting, all of us, everyone sitting in this room, we are all projecting our consciousness across the entire multi-dimensional universe as we sit here. We take this for granted. We are not physical beings. We're not astral beings. We're not beings of thought. We exist far beyond these constructs and these vehicles of consciousness. So all of us, this very moment, is projecting our consciousness into a biological vehicle. And we're using these biological vehicles to explore, to experience the physical world for a very limited period of time. Yet we take it for granted. You know, the biggest problem that we face, of course, is that we identify with our biological bodies to the point where out of 7.2 billion people on the planet, the vast majority actually believe that we are these bipedal humanoid forms. Matter of fact, one of the first things I learned, I started having my out-of-body experiences in '72. Self-initiated. It's a mind blower. Opened me up completely. And every time you have one, it opened me up even further. And one of the things I quickly learned is that everything that I had ever learned throughout my entire life was flawed to the point of false. Everything. All the beliefs, all the theories, almost everything was flawed. Think about this. Even the very basis of our society. What is the basis of our entire civilization? And that is that we're human beings. Isn't that the true basis? We're physical human beings. And our societies throughout time have been built on this premise. But what I quickly discovered back in even the early 70s is that I'm not a human being. You are not a human being. A human, this is a temporary biological vehicle of consciousness we are using that is needed to explore, experience the physical world. Here's what's wild. We have another energy body on every level of the universe. Right now, you are existing. You are operating. You are absolutely functional, fully functional in many different dimensions because they're all interrelated. When you have a thought, you're experiencing the thought dimensions. When you have an emotion, what are you doing? You're feeling your emotional body, which is the astral body, as many people call it. So, we exist in multiple dimensions, but we're focused on the physical right now. One of the great advantages of out-of-body experiences, and what Bob talks about extensively, is that we have to take the time and the effort to begin to break through the barriers. Because we carry, there's no external blocks that hold us back. We create the blocks by what we accept and believe in our own lives. And we do it from birth. And many people think, oh, well, I've gotten over those childhood conditioning and programming. And most of us feel that way. But in actuality, we carry it with us. Because consciousness, we carry these things with us. When I was a young boy, I spent my first 6 years in private Lutheran school. And I vividly remember being programmed severely about the doctrine of the church. I remember having to memorize the catechism as a small boy. I forget how it's 40 pages long to be confirmed. And some of you may remember this. I don't know how many of you had to do this. What is this but indoctrination of a belief system? What is the difference between me as a Lutheran boy being indoctrinated in the catechism and those boys, millions of them in Pakistan, memorizing the Quran? What's the difference, really? It's indoctrination is indoctrination is indoctrination. And we have all been, let's just say, influenced heavily by this. And we, unfortunately, we don't acknowledge it sometimes as we should. Because this childhood indoctrination is what often leads to the blocks that we encourage in our own exploration of consciousness. Because that's why we're here, right? What is the mainstay of the Monroe Institute but the exploration of consciousness? And who creates the blocks but us? And we have to acknowledge, we have to begin to dig deep within ourselves and begin to explore exactly where we come from and what we continue to believe. Because one of the most shocking things I've learned in my 41 years now, I've been having out-of-body experiences. For 20 years, I've been teaching extensively about it. And one of the first things I learned is that I had to let go of everything I had learned. When I begin a workshop, that's the first thing I say. You have to start looking at your own beliefs critically, because you, us, we create our own blocks by what we choose to believe. And it's a tough one, because when you give up these beliefs that we cling to so desperately, you feel like you're entering a void, and it's uncomfortable. You have to stretch. You have to go, whereas start like no man has gone beyond. It's scary. You have to give up all the stuff that you carry with you. And that's one of the keys to, I feel, the exploration of consciousness, and one that's seldom talked about, because it's a sensitive subject. This is not a matter of what's right and what's wrong, what's good and bad. It's a matter of clearing the path for yourself. I'll give you an example. I once did a workshop, a 3-day workshop, and this is typical. I get invited to a lot of different kinds of groups, and I'm using this as an example. Very intense group, very much, in their minds, explorers of consciousness. Just like there's thousands of groups around the world that are exploring consciousness in their own way. Here I arrive, and I find out, I try to get a feel who because I'm always sponsored by someone. I don't arrange anything. People ask me, I say, I decide, and I go. So I try to get a feel from my sponsor, and I quickly find out that my sponsor, The group are born-again Christians, which is a little bit out of the norm for me, to put it mildly. But there's a twist to this that really gets a little unusual. They're also Hindu devotees who chant the names of God, the Hindu names of God, throughout the day and in the morning very early, because I know they woke me up every morning chanting the names of God. The point is, instead of letting things go and starting fresh, what do many groups and people do? They've built upon an established belief system, which is, of course, Christianity. They've added, of course, and this is not a negativism. I just want to bring out, this is what I have witnessed in my travels time and time again. This is a little more extreme example. And then they've added Hinduism to their Christianity. And it was a beautiful merge, surprisingly. It's a beautiful merge. The chanting was beautiful. The point is that as many of groups and individuals are exploring consciousness, they fail to see that they are exploring consciousness in a box. They have created their own box. Some boxes are much bigger than others. Some boxes are much smaller. And they're exploring within their box, and they think they're open-minded. I run into this everywhere I go. Everybody seems to be exploring within their own self-made box. If we truly, if all of us wish to be true explorers of consciousness, we have to make a concerted effort to destroy that box. Every belief is a wall. Every belief that you hold, I don't care how endearing it may be, I don't know how old it may be, it doesn't matter. If it's man-made, it's flawed. It's that simple. Anything man-made is flawed. I've never seen an exception. Now, and people love it. A lot of people hate when I say that, of course. And I say it a lot. And people take it as a challenge. It's not meant as a challenge. It's just meant as an observational fact. The biggest, in my 40 years and 20 years of traveling and doing workshops, doing conferences, this has been the number one issue I see. I see it when I spoke at UFO conferences. They have their own philosophies. They have their own paradigm they've created. They've, in a sense, their own religion. And when I spoke, I presented my evidence about the true meaning of abduction phenomena. The room went aghast. 2,000 people, by the way, shocked, just shocked of my presentation, hour-and-a-half presentation on how alien abduction could be, logically, potentially, an out-of-body experience. I'm not going to go into all the details of that. I write about it. It's a chapter in Secret of the Soul. But it's become another religion. They have high priests darn near, and it continues. Same speakers every year present the same things. The point is that that's another box. And we have to be so on guard, I think, in our own state of consciousness. We have to be brutal on ourselves. We have to examine ourselves all the time. Don't take anything for granted. Don't assume anything. You have to be able to ask the tough questions of yourself and ask them all the time. Because often, what's become the new religion? Quantum physics. Oh, yes. I've also been to those conferences. Unbelievable. Superstring theory, the new religion of the enlightened and the educated. You would not believe if you try to, in any way, shape, or form, go to a conference on this subject and bring up another subject that is in any way, let's just say, not in their philosophy. Oh my God, you're attacked. The point is, that's the new religion now. It's hip. Everything is strings. Strings. And of course, there's 13 dimensions, sometimes 4. I've been to conferences where they debate the number of the number of dimensions. They will literally debate the dimensions. How many? 12, 13, 14, and they'll get heated discussions, I've seen. Heated discussions. No, you're wrong. 12 dimensions. This theory proves it. My point is, what's the core issue here? They're so obsessed with matter, they have to create tiny vibrating strings, for God's sake. They can't let go of the paradigm that, oh my God, maybe reality is not form-based. So they're stuck into this rut. And this is some of the most intellectual people in the entire world. Huge conferences on this subject. And they get up and micro-manage the size of their strings, so to speak. Yes. It's no one, you think out of the box on this subject and you're just a heathen. What's the difference between this and a religion? What is the difference? It's just a new, more mental, intellectual way to examine the universe. The core issue is there's still this obsession with form and matter as the center point. You know, one of the first things I learned back in 1972 when I had my first out-of-body experience? Well, I learned a lot of things then. But the first thing I learned was, my God, the physical world is not the center of reality. Matter and fact, and I learned quickly, the physical world is not even, it's this thin epidermis layer of the universe. It's minute compared to the other dimensions. It's hard for me to even get across to you how small, and the physical universe looks so vast to us. But in relationship to the other dimensions, this is a tiny, tiny, tiny. I use the analogy in my workshop. I sometimes will point to these beams. The carpet is the physical world. The rest of these beams, the extent of it, when we die, we move in this much into the universe. We're moving in a 1/4 inch into the universe at our death as we move into the astral. That is how vast it is. It's beyond our conception. All of these metaphysical theories of 7 dimensions, and there's 7 cute little dimensions within these 7 dimensions, that is bull. Bull. We have no idea how many dimensions there are. And I have found that it's expanding because of thought. Every dimension becomes larger and larger because thought creates reality. So the dimensions, the size of them, it's always growing. It's always expanding. The point is, don't allow yourself to get caught up in these belief systems. I don't care whether it's a religious belief system, a metaphysical belief system, or a scientific belief system. They're all flawed. Seriously flawed. Sometimes I use more harsh language than that. But I'm trying to scale back a little bit. We have to be so on guard to what we believe, because we are the ones throwing out the anchors to our consciousness. Every single belief. If you believe that you're a physical human being, you have thrown out a huge anchor, because not only we are not physical, we are not human. It's that simple. There's no doubt of this. We are no more human than we are flower or bee or rock. It's that simple. We are non-physical. It's amazing what we are. We're magnificent beings. Magnificent beings. And we're powerful beings. We have extended our consciousness through every level of the universe to be sitting here. Think of it. We exist on every level of the universe. We exist beyond time, beyond space. It's amazing who we are and what we are. We exist beyond our concepts of linear motion and linear time. And we create our reality on every single level of the universe. We do. We choose. It's our decisions. It's our actions. We create it all. But we have to own that. And a lot of people have a difficult time owning that. They have a very difficult time. They feel disempowered by their governments, by their religions, by their upbringing. Let's face it, many of us were brought up in a very fear-based environment. Fear of God, fear of damnation, fear of sin, weren't we? I was. I admit it. My God, there was a fear for everything. And I'm not even Catholic. My God, take it to another level if you're Catholic. And I'm not trying to make fun of anything. I'm just making a point. It's on us. And the first big step is to begin to start to really take a hard look at yourself. Ask the tough questions. Do you believe these things? Do you believe that you're a male or a female? That's a block, believe it or not. Because we're neither of these things. It's a temporary vehicle of consciousness we're using. Very temporary. Very temporarily. Do you believe that you are a form-based being? Do you believe that reality is three-dimensional? This one is. Yes. It doesn't. But I just made it clear that this is just the outer epidermis of the universe. All of these things are false. Do you believe that the physical world is an effective baseline for even determining the nature of reality? No, it is not. These are important questions. Once you realize, and I realize this through personal experiences, because most people, even when they have out-of-body experiences, guess what? We take our stuff with us. We take all of our stuff with us. If you believe that you are a female, a human female, guess what you will look like in the out-of-body state? A human female. But why? Because you have identified with that form. That's why. Once I realized that I let go of this as being me, I stopped being human. Matter of fact, my arms and legs would begin to dissolve away. I would become very quickly like a teardrop of consciousness, then a globe, for lack of a better word, of consciousness. Then my vision would be 360 degrees. I would give up this animal vision. Because how even we perceive now, we perceive like animals. This is not us. This is a vehicle that we have identified with to such a degree that we have incorporated all the limits of this animal body. And what's sad is that most people carry the animal body with them, even into their out-of-body states. Because they know all the books talk about it. Everybody's walking around. Bob's one of the few that wrote books that went beyond that, where he's a point of consciousness traveling. But most of the hundreds of books there, people continue to think they are humanoids. so they limit themselves. In other words, everything that we carry with us now, we will carry with us not only now, but into the afterlife. That's why this stuff is so important, because our journey is just beginning. It's just beginning. We're children. We're children just beginning the journey. A lot of people feel that when we make this transition we call death, that we go home. I have some bad news for you. It's a little shocking, but as some of you know that's listened, I do an entire presentation on this topic. I've written an entire book on this topic, trying to make it clear what I've experienced. Death it's like the page of a book turning. But we have to ask everything, because we have accepted the flawed assumptions. You must question everything and assume nothing. Question everything and everybody, including me. When I do a workshop, I tell people that. Don't accept anything I say. Find out for yourself. Find out for yourself, because that's the only way you will ever know. And you have to know from experience. You have to develop your ability so you can expand your own potential to explore your multidimensional self. But the journey does not stop. I'd like to address this real quickly, if I can. It's difficult because I do an hour presentation on this subject alone. But what's this continuation? And by the way, the continuation of consciousness at death. What is this? What happens? Death is nothing more of the transfer of consciousness from our outer dense vehicle of consciousness to our less dense vehicle of consciousness. For most people, that will be what is commonly called their astral body. Some people call it their second body. Many people feel that they go to the soul level. That is not what I and hundreds of other people have observed. Most people are too identified with their physical humanoid form. They're locked into a paradigm that this is reality. Because each person limits themselves. They go to the reality that resonates with them. And we carry our complete state of consciousness with us. You don't become enlightened just because you died. The ignorant remain ignorant. The bigots remain bigots. They just have a different energy body. And they go to a reality that resonates with them. This is an important subject because this is the way that all of us will be moving. We're all moving beyond the body. The reason why out-of-body exploration, I feel, is so critically important is because it is our evolutionary path. This is not some theoretical thing that you can explore or may want to, and I've had people come up to me, one day I'm going to explore that subject that you write about. Oh, that's interesting. I'd like to see you escape it. I'd like to see you avoid it. This is not some, I think I'm going to check out the out-of-body state, and maybe I'll find it interesting. I don't even understand that. Our evolutionary cycle is one we're moving inward, we're exploring, we're moving always to a higher vibrational level. The real purpose, I feel, the necessity for learning about this is because it's who we are. It's what we are. We are on a journey of consciousness inward to different vibrational levels. And until we master that ability, we will always be, what? Prisoners of our own self-conception. Most people at death, I have found, go to the lower or middle astral plane. And these are beautiful areas, many of them. I'm not talking about some nasty place. We're talking about beautiful areas. But people can only conceive of what they have experienced and what they're comfortable with. We go to what resonates with us. If you have identified yourself as a woman, you will continue to be a woman on the astral plane. You will continue to have the same limits because that is the limits that you have accepted for yourself. What I found shocking was, and I still find shocking, often when I have experiences beyond the body, I find that the dead, essentially, come up to me and ask me, how can I fly? How can I do this? They can't. How can I walk through walls when they can't? How can I, in other words, why are they limited? Because of their self-conception. Because they have bought into the limitations that they have accepted while they were still in the body, and they carry that with them. Just like we carry all of our limits with us. All of us. This applies to me as well. This is why it's so important for us to address our own stuff. Make a list. Make a list and check it. Really explore, what do you accept and believe about yourself? Because it's all you, we all, each of us have created a box around us. One of the great things about out-of-body exploration is that it is one way to blow out the walls of a box. It's one way. It's not the only way. You can do it through meditation. You can do it. The point is, it's one powerful way to blow it out, because you suddenly realize, oh my God, not only am I not a physical being, but I'm not a humanoid either. And then other things come to you. Oh my God, I don't need form. I'm more than thought. I'm more than emotion. Think of it. And we have to get over this, let's just say, paradigm that, let's just say, the philosopher Descartes made this famous comment that I think, therefore I am. It's one of the greatest flaws, because we are not who we think. Our thoughts are not us. One of the things I suddenly realized that I am not my thoughts. My thoughts are a vehicle, another vehicle. My energy, my mental body is a vehicle of my conscious awareness. It's a much more refined vehicle than the astral, of course, but it's still just a vehicle. So we have to always be on guard. We always have to be looking at how we perceive ourselves in the world, because this is so important to our entire future. Because there's no escaping the fact that all of us are going to have an out-of-body experience. There's no escaping it. We're all going to move into this other vibrational world. Are we going to do it with an enlightened, let's just say, perception of ourselves? Are we going to cast off all the anchors and the walls that we have created? Or are we going to be like the vast majority of humanity that carries all of their stuff with them? There are endless churches on the astral plane. There's endless mosques on the astral plane. The beliefs continue. Wouldn't you think people would go, well, this is different. There's my body. I think I'll maybe latch on to something new here. People have a tendency to stay with what they're comfortable with I was shocked when I'm speaking from personal experience, and I write about this in my new book. I was shocked when I discovered preachers still doing these sermons. Hellfire and damnation, damn near. You would think, no, Bill, come on, that can't exist. That can't exist. People would be smarter. They would be more. No, why would they be? Think of it. Why would they? Do you think that someone that's been indoctrinated by the Taliban are going to change just because they die? Why would they change? They've moved into another belief system territory, which Bob Monroe called them territories. I also call them territories or consensus realities. There are countless consensus realities, and that's where people go at death. They go to the reality that resonates with them. And they're often much like this, but they're nicer. Many people feel, and what gets me, and I still am blown away by this, they think they're in heaven. There's no death. There's no disease. There's no starvation. There's no wars. It's so much nicer than the physical world. The physical world's a tough place. We all know this. Physical world's a challenge, isn't it? We have to deal with a lot of stuff here. It's dense. There's all kinds of things that we have to be concerned with. Once you get to the astral, man, it's a piece of cake. It's wonderful. I was shocked by the number of people that were living very mundane lives. And I'm talking about many different consensus realities that I've personally have explored and others have explored. And I was totally shocked by them, how mundane they were. And how things didn't change as much as I would have thought they would have. I once had an out-of-body experience. I lived in China for 4 years, communist China. And I had many out-of-body experiences while living in China. And everybody lives in a high-rise. I was in Shanghai. I would have an out-of-body experience in Shanghai, and the dead around the Shanghai area are living just like they are in the physical world, in their high-rise condos, eating their noodles. Swear, that's what I witnessed. I was blown away for a while. I thought I was observing the physical counterpart because it takes a while to get used to your perception. Remember, you don't have eyes or ears when you leave your body. Your mind creates these vehicles, these tools of perception. You always have to remember that. There are no eyes, there's no ears. There's no verbalization like we're doing with basically language. Its thought is transferred. And it took me a while to realize, I thought I was observing the physical world until somebody come up to me and saw me and started to communicate, which was surprisingly elegant. There was no block. They were Chinese. I'm not Chinese, but we understood each other perfectly, which is the way it is. It's always nonverbal. Very elegant, very elegant. And then I asked them, I was just curious, are you physical? Are you oh, no. But they were living exactly the way the Chinese people live in the physical body. And they're no different than any other society. And there's countless millions of these consensus realities because people they take their stuff with them. They take it with them and they create, or they assimilate is a better word, into a reality that's comfortable and resonates with them. And this is what all of us have done for possibly hundreds of incarnations. Think about it. It's shocking. This leads me to an interesting point. We have done the same thing. I have done the same thing. We have to get to the point where we realize that we are the creative force, that we are non-physical spiritual beings that create our reality, that we're not just a hunk of form, of flesh, that we have the capacity to be so much more. Because we will be the ones that limit ourselves. One of the most shocking things that I've learned is this, and that is that this billions of people in all their religions, instead of going to paradise, what they've generally encountered is a mundane reality, a step up from what they experienced in the physical world. It goes against everything I was taught as a child. Everything I was taught as a child. But look at it this way. No one has done this to these billions and billions of people. They've done it to themselves by their own self-conception. And since we're immortal, the time it takes for us to awaken to this situation is meaningless. We are immortal. If it takes 1,000,000 years, what difference does it take? What difference does it